This one is a doozy. And I really recommend that you redraw this shape to its bigger form. I actually went and blew up this picture here so that it's much easier to draw within it. Because when you're dealing with the area of a polygon, a regular polygon, typically what that is a hint is that we're going to break this into triangles. Now we know the entire area of this thing is 384 root 3, which is 384 times root 3. We can think of it that way. More on that in a moment. And if we were to break this into 6 even sections, right, this polygon, what we know is that the area of each of these triangles would be 1/6 of this area, or 384 divided by 6. So that means that, each of these are 64 root 3. That is the area of each of these individual triangles. Now, if we zoom in a little bit closer, what we can do in this triangle is we can make a radius that goes all the way from the center down here, forming a 90-degree triangle within this triangle right here. And what we know is that this measure is actually 30 degrees. How do we know that? Well, if an entire circle is 360 degrees, we know then that is each of these is 60 degrees, because that all would add up to be 360. And since we cut these in half, this is 60 degrees cut in half. That must mean that this is 30, this is 30. But we're only going to deal with one triangle here now. So we have 30 here. This formed a 90-degree angle here, so that leaves us with 60 here. And we know that in a special right triangle, we have that here, that whatever is across from 30 is going to be our base to work with. And what they're telling us is that this side length here, this entire side length is A. So what does that make this little section here? That actually makes it A over 2. And what that makes, and this is our base, and what we're going to want is the height. And what we see is that that would be A over 2 root 3, because across from 60, it's whatever x is times root 3. And in this case, x is A over 2. Woo! Now, what is this all useful for? Well, if we know that each of these triangles is 64 root 3, that's their area, 64 root 3. What that must mean is that the area of this triangle is 32 root 3. And we're going to use that to solve for A. And how do we do that? Well, remember, the formula for a triangle is base times height over 2, and equals your area. Well, in this case, our base is A over 2, and our height is A over 2 times root 3. Remember, they're all being times by each other, and that's going to make life a lot easier for us. And we already know what our root is. Let me go ahead and get this all out of the way here for a second. Bye-bye. Go away. Go away. All right, there we go. All right. And so now we have 32 root 3 as our area. That's what this all equals. Well, let's get 2 to the other side by multiplying both sides by 2. We multiply this by 2. Remember, this is being multiplied by that. So we want to pick the like term to multiply by to make life easier. So that cancels out. And we have A over 2 times A over 2 times root 3 over 1, just to make life easier, equals that 2 times 32, 64 root 3. Well, this is root 3 over root 1, which is just root 3, and that tells us that these cancel out. And then now what we end up with as we move along the line here is we can simplify the left side, where we just multiply our numerator. So we end up with A squared, then our denominators, over 4 equals 64. We can now simplify this by timesing both sides by 4 by 4. Ooh, that's a sloppy 4. And then 64 times 4 is 256, and we see that A squared will equal 256, and that means that A equals the square root of that. So the square root of 256 is just 16. Now, that's not the answer. Very tempting, and sure enough, it's almost an answer with D here. What that tells us that A is 16. The side length of this is 16. Well, that means this is also 16. And they want to know the area of this square. Well, if one side is 16, that means that this is also 16, which means that the area is 16 times 16, or 16 squared. And we actually already solved for that, because that is what A squared is. 16 squared equals 256. 56. That's our answer.